Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind, our 79th episode, which is insane. Sorry we're a little late this week. Real life happened, as it does.
Yep.
But speaking of that, Niles, how have you been since our last recording, the last couple weeks or so?
Just rolling with the punches of real life, honestly.
Ouch.
There's been, lots of punches. No, not too many. I'm exaggerating. Just been traveling a lot lately. I had to go back to the Midwest to go to a funeral out there. But, silver lining, get to see lots of family. So that was nice. But yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks otherwise. And yeah, it's been a crazy start to the new year. But otherwise, loving it. It's great. How about you, Dylan? How are you?
Yeah, doing all right. Just busy with work and seeing a couple movies, watching some shows. Same old stuff. Nothing major to report in on this time. Oh, wait, actually, that's a lie. I released a YouTube video this week on The Boys at D-Day Movies. I'll link that in the description. It's about Homelander and The Boys, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. So go give that a watch if y'all are interested. But... yeah, so that's all about us, and we are talking about a film once again, and we are this week talking about The Boy and the Heron. The latest from writer and director Hayao Miazaki, The Boy and the Heron, follows a young boy named Mahito who, after the death of his mother, moves to a country estate with his father and is swept up on an adventure with a mysterious gray heron into a magical realm of life and death. And this movie has two casts, depending on which version you're watching, English or Japanese. So I didn't include that here. But Niles, what are your initial non-spoilery thoughts on The Boy and the Heron?
I really didn't like this movie. I loved it. I am very positive on it overall. I'm honestly just such a fan of Studio Ghibli. I think it's such a phenomenal production studio in the entertainment industry. I feel like they rarely miss, in my opinion. I haven't seen all of it. I haven't seen all of their works, but I feel like I've seen a lot of them. Like Princess Mononoke, Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, Kiki's Delivery Service, like Ponyo. There's so many. And there's so many I haven't watched still, too, like Porco Rosso. Like, there's so much that I still want to check out. But, I feel like Studio Ghibli, one of the things that I just love about them is the animation style. It's always so fluid. You look at other animes and sometimes they'll just spend like 10 seconds. It's obviously a budget issue. It's like 10 seconds on a frame.
For TV shows especially, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They'll spend like a long time just lingering on someone's face and just have exposition over it. And nothing wrong with that. But Studio Ghibli, just like, it's so fluid. They have these really great original concepts that are blended with like Japanese folklore and folk stories, which I really love. And, there's just always some kind of fascinating spiritual element included too. And there goes my cat jumping in front of the screen. He just has to be involved. But then the character designs too, I think in their movies, they're just always so cool. They're so imaginative. And it's such a densely detailed world every time, like especially this movie. I think The Boy and the Heron, there's so many small details. It merits like multiple rewatches to get through. And I've only seen the dubbed version. I do want to check out the subbed at some point, but the dubbed was just fantastic performances across the board. And the American voice acting cast, they did a great job. And I think a sign of a good voice acting job is when you can't recognize the voice actor. It's like it's such an original voice that you're like, who is that? I can't tell. But I couldn't place anyone except for like Batista and Willem Dafoe, and that was kind of it.
Yeah, but even them, like it took a minute to like recognize. Like I remember when Dave Bautista's character first showed up, I'm like, I know this voice.
Yeah,
I recognize it. Thinking, and I think I saw you like do a little hand thing when we were watching, and like I think we came to the realization at similar times, but I loved this as well, and I think it's just a beautiful film. I saw it first at an early screening in IMAX in Japanese, subtitled, and then I saw it last night with you in English, so I've seen both. Both voice casts were terrific. And I think a lot of the performances followed similar paths to the translated version, if that makes sense. And of the Ghibli films that I've seen, this is definitely the most abstract one, and is not as accessible as something like Princess Mononoke, I would say. But I don't think that's bad. It's just different, and I really enjoyed the experience of watching it and seeing this story and world unfold. I would super recommend it. I mean, it's incredible, obviously.
Yeah, definitely a big recommend for me too. I think it's just such a neat concept, and it's so rich, vivid. Like, how many other adjectives could I use to describe this movie? It's like there's so much going on in it, and at the same time, it's honestly kind of a simple tale too, because it is about Mahito and like him grappling with the death of his mother and kind of coming to terms with it. And that's kind of the whole premise, but it's a lot more complicated than that. But that's like kind of the main through line here. And I feel like a lot of Studio Ghibli movies, they do that well, of starting out with this very basic plot, and then everything just kind of builds and builds and builds, and it gets more complicated and complicated. Like Ponyo is just like about a girl who's like a fish and turns into a real person, and that's the whole thing, kind of. But there's all these side characters, all these other things going on, and even Spirited Away, it just kind of starts out very simple of like, oh yeah, I'm just traveling with my family to a new town, and then we stopped here for some food, and then chaos ensues, and it's just like, I think they're really phenomenal at that, with starting with something simple and building it up really
well. And the ones I've seen too, like there's so much of Ghibli films that are about the world of the story and the characters' relationship to the world, especially the natural world, and how important that is. And we'll talk about that more a little bit later as well. But I would say like everything people love about Studio Ghibli films is here, right?
Yes.
And if you're a fan of Studio Ghibli films, you've already seen this. But we are reserving spoilers for the spoiler section. And I would say if you're not already a fan or don't know what this is, just go watch it, or watch it at home when it comes out, whatever you want to do. But yeah, do you want to jump into spoilers at this point? Just get going?
Yeah. I'll set the scene really quickly.
All right.
If you've seen the movie, you know what happens. But yeah, we've kind of summarized the initial concept, but Mahito, he basically gets sucked into this world. I would call it kind of a world between worlds in a way, world of life and death, that's created by the Tower Master, when he's searching for his lost stepmother, Natsuko. And then he starts to traverse this vast, sprawling landscape with precarious environments of this Tower Master's world, with the Heron and others in search of his stepmother, Natsuko. Yeah, that's kind of the rest of the film, I would say.
And also, he's kind of lured in by the Heron to like save his mom, right?
Yes.
It's like, your presence is requested. You can save your mom or something like that, and it's I love the slow introduction of the Heron too. Like, it just keeps swooping by him and flying into his room and like messing with him. I love that scene with the like wooden toy katana or whatever it is, where he breaks it against the Heron, and then he wakes up from a dream and it's in the closet, and he picks it up and it just shatters where it broke in his dream.
It's amazing. It's amazingly detailed. But yeah, I love all those intro sequences. Like, I was talking with my partner too about that, like the intro part of like they arrive at this grand estate, and it's just like, I want to live there. It just looks so nice. And I mean, of course, I would want it to be better kept, but it's just a beautiful landscape. Just how they set the scene there, it's stunning. But yeah, all those like interactions with the Heron early on are magical.
Well, and all the old ladies who live there, and the one old man who are just like obsessed with the canned food and the tobacco and all that stuff. Just such a fun little cast of characters for just a portion of the movie. And also, I was like wondering, are they the staff of this estate, or what is this place? Because it seems like there's this big building where lots of people live, and then there's the house where Mahito and his new family live. It's a very strange little setup there, but I thought I liked it. It was cool.
Yeah. I kind of assumed that they were caretakers, but at the same time, very closely associated with the family too. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I didn't need a ton of details because I'm like, you guys are just fun. That's just the cast of
Yeah.
characters. You're just cool to be there.
Hmm.
Um, I think one of the things that I've seen a lot online with this movie has been uh, lots of meta analyses of the film.
Okay.
Um, because you can kind of draw a lot of comparisons between the narrative of The Boy and the Heron and Miyazaki's legacy in film and his life in general.
Hmm.
He was retired for a while, like he kind of stepped out of Studio Ghibli and said, "I'm done making movies," and then he came back to make this film. So he's I think it's kind of his own reflection in a way on his history within the industry. And it's not just
Hmm.
him coming up with these films. A lot of people contributed to them, and it's not just him coming up with all these ideas, but him as a director and a writer and everything. He's had this long history already with
Hmm.
transporting audiences to these magical, spiritual, otherworldly realms and narratives, and they can really suck you in,
Yeah.
and make you forget where you are and about reality. And that's just kind of like the story in this film too, as well. Like he's sucks us in again,
Hmm.
and it's tough to kind of break out of that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I feel
Well,
like there's a lot of meta stuff here about his life.
yeah, and I could see too. I don't know a ton about his personal life, but I could see just the way he's been so influential on the storytelling of Studio Ghibli, and he's old now and has stepped out and was this was meant to be his final film, so he's trying to retire again, but maybe not anymore. But I could see him writing a lot of himself into the Tower Master, and
Yeah,
having like the Tower Master created this whole world and this fantasy and is seeking someone to carry on that legacy after him,
yes,
and has maybe some anxieties about the real world and also the worlds he's created, and anxiety about what it means to pass on this thing that you've built up for your entire life. And I think there are definitely parallels to draw in there.
yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, with the Tower Master, he has to precariously build this new tower out of blocks every 3 days to maintain the integrity of his world. And Miyazaki, has time and again built these equally precarious narratives slowly over time.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were just kind of talking about it with some of these films. They start off really simple, but they build and they build and they build, and they become these one of a kind stories. So he is very much, I feel like, the Tower Master in this film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know much too about his life before going into this movie. But I did a little bit of research before this episode, and
Mm-hmm.
this movie, from what I could find online, it does lean heavily on a lot of his own life experiences, and I feel like a lot of his films kind of do. They have some of these
Mm-hmm.
recurring elements of like his mother. Apparently, she was in and out of the hospital a lot for a long time in his childhood.
Okay.
I think it was tuberculosis, if I remember right. But you get that in this film, and I feel like I've seen that in some of his other works too. But especially that opening scene, from my understanding, when in The Boy and the Heron here, where the hospital's on fire in Tokyo, and everything's like a flurry around him
Yeah.
trying to get to
God,
his
the
mom's.
animation of that scene was absurd.
It's beautiful. Oh my god, I love that scene. Uh, but I found this quote from Miyazaki where he says, "My first memories are of bombed out cities." Because he was born,
Mm-hmm.
I think, around that time when World War II was just kind of ending, or in the middle of
Yeah.
it. I can't remember exactly, but he was. Those are his first memories, these bombed out cities and stuff. So you can see that coming into play here, I think, with this opening
Yeah.
scene of him.
He was born in 1941, so he would have been born at the beginning of World War II,
Yeah.
sort of.
Okay. That's good to know. And then his father, too, also manufactured warplanes,
Huh.
or at least fighter jets. He contributed a little bit to the war effort. So you
Okay.
can see some of that coming through here with his
Mm-hmm.
own life. But, I think this movie is also like about grappling with loss and change and a lot of different themes. And Miyazaki has experienced a lot of that in his life too. So it is, I feel like, a very much reflective of his
Yeah.
life and of his career as a filmmaker.
Cool. Yeah. But yeah, we've got some recurring elements from Ghibli films as well. You want to talk through some of those? There are
Yeah,
lots of little I feel like everyone I've seen so far at least has like at least one type of like fun little guy. Like they're always little critters.
Yes, there really are. Like we were kind of saying earlier, like this film has like a lot of those Ghibli magic moments just sprinkled throughout. Like you see, it's like poetry. It rhymes. Um, yeah, he's got these little characters running through. I love all the recurring Studio Ghibli elements that you see here with the Wara Wara, which are those little inflatable white creatures that go off to be
People.
born in the real world. I thought was so neat. They're like the soot sprites in Kiki's Delivery Service, and then the forest spirits in Princess Mononoke, which I love. I love both of those movies to death. So I just love the imagination when it comes to the creature designs and these little like monsters and goblins and stuff. I also
I love too the matter of fact element of part of them. It's like they're all floating up to go be born, and then Mahito's like, "What? To be born as people?" And then Kiriko's like, "Yeah, people." Like what? Like it's just like, yeah, no shit, man. I love stuff like that.
What else would they be? It's like, well,
yeah.
There's a lot of good comedy in this movie too.
Yeah.
And then, I love all the unexplained magical elements too. You get that a lot through a lot of his movies, like Howl's Powers and Howl's Moving Castle. Here you get a lot with the stones and the tower. Like, the only explanation we really get is it crashed onto Earth like 100 years ago, and that's what you got to go on. And you're like, okay, I don't have anything more than that about the magic.
Yeah, there's always this like soft world building, soft magic in all these movies, which I love. It's like we don't need an explanation as to why things are the way they are. It's just like this is this world, this is the way they are. In like Castle in the Sky, there's just a massive city-sized ruin that floats around in the clouds on propellers. It's like, you gonna explain how this works? No. Why would we? Why would we do that? This is just there. It's there. It's part of the world.
We don't need an explanation. We just need to know it's there, and if you want to address it, you address it. But honestly, sometimes when they don't explain it, that just makes it even cooler. And I also love, it's always sprinkled throughout a lot of his stuff, but the interactions with the spiritual realms, all of Spirited Away is just a spiritual realm excursion. But, the Forest God and Princess Mononoke, you get that here. And then, I mean, in The Boy and the Heron, you spend like 2/3 of the film in the spiritual realm, in this world between worlds, and it's just so fun. So all those elements I just love to death. It's just such a great time.
Yeah. One plot thing that I really enjoyed was just after Mahito and Natsuko and Kiriko all disappear, one of the grannies is like talking to Mahito's dad, and it's like, oh yeah, there was that one time that Himi, Mahito's mom, just like disappeared for a year, and then she came back and she didn't remember, and then later in the story, Mahito runs into his mom as a little girl, and then she becomes like a companion of his for the rest of the movie, and then at the end she goes through her own door back into her own time. Like it's like this world in the tower is just this place out of time. And it reminded me of something else that had a similar concept, but I can't fucking remember what it is, so it doesn't matter. But
that's okay.
But
I mean, one of the things that I saw online was like, it's kind of like Nightmare Before Christmas in a way, with all those doors, and you can go to different times or like little worlds, but not exactly an apples to apples comparison.
No, but and I love just, it's such fun and dreamlike world building, right? So we enter the tower, which is this sort of derelict structure off in the forest by the estate, right? And then the tower just there is already somewhat like larger than life and different on the inside than it is on the outside, which is really interesting. But then Mahito sinks through the floor and just descends into this massive world, this massive ocean populated by ships sailed by the dead. And he's at this like this island with a golden gate into a cemetery, and we don't really dive into what's going on there all that much, but Kiriko shows up and like puts a little circle of fire around them, and they have to walk backwards to get away safely. And then from there we move into this shipwreck cave island thing where Kiriko lives with all the waru waru. And then we move from there into this like lush countryside populated by these giant, very hungry, violent parakeets.
Yeah.
And then we go back to the tower, but it's a much larger, more fantastical tower. It's like a whole city at this point, and it leads to this impossible garden in the sky where the Tower Master lives. And it just like it's such cool world building, and it just flows like a dream, you know? It's just like one section bleeds into the next in a way that wouldn't like make conventional sense, but it just works in this story so well. And there are so many fun characters and little things across. So we don't even have any notes about the Heron. I feel like we should talk about him a little bit. I love that he's a funny little guy too. He's like he's like this majestic bird, and then this like weird little head pops out of his mouth, and he's just like a squatty little Danny DeVito guy.
Yeah, right. He's got all the warts and stuff on his nose, and I mean that whole sequence of him kind of revealing his true form is just such a excellent build-up. It's
very unsettling at first. Like you start to see the teeth and this weird stuff like poking out of the beak. It's like what the fuck?
Yeah, and like we never get like a full explanation of like, so why is he there? Because like when he first came on screen and he was interacting with our protagonist, I was starting to think like, is this the old man like character? Is this the great uncle person like trapped in the Heron form? And he's like, is it going to be like a Beauty and the Beast story where he needs to help him get out of the Heron? But it's like, nope. We don't ever explain the Heron or why he's just this dude in a heron's body. He's just there. But apparently there's a whole bunch of these gray herons that we learned from Kiriko in the World of Life and Death. So, but yeah, the Heron's such a cool character design, and the way just you get those teeth at first, like when like he's flying by one moment and you see the teeth and you're like, what the fuck, a bird with teeth.
Yeah, and I love too the scene where Mahito like makes him a little plug for the hole in his beak, and then he puts it in. He's like, "Oh, we're not friends or allies. I'm gonna fucking ditch you." And then he's like, "Ah, shit! It's like it's sticking down a little bit, and it's bothering me." And he just like fixes it for him again, and then he doesn't run away anymore.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I think that scene, because we haven't even really talked about Mahito too much too yet, but he is kind of this. I think they said in the movie that his name translates to sincere one.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that scene when he's like, when the Heron's like, I'm gonna double cross you. Oh, actually, can you fix this for me real quick? He's like, yeah, I'll do it. I think that just kind of spoke volumes about his character, where he's like, yeah, I'll do this, but he was such a good guy. He even buried the pelican too, which I was like, wow. Good for you.
The noble pelican, as credited in the cast list. But and oh god, one part I just thought was so funny was like when the Heron's like, okay, I'll draw the parakeets off, and you have to run into the blacksmith. I love how like they do that, and then he goes into the blacksmith, and there are just more parakeets in there. Like
it's like, well, shit, you didn't do anything, Heron.
Yep. All right, but you had some negatives about it, or some critiques. Do you want to dive into?
Yeah, because initially when we left the movie theater, I was like, man, I have no notes. That was like perfect in my mind. It was such a good Studio Ghibli film. It delivered on what it promised to be. It's been about 24 hours since we saw the movie, so on reflection, I do have some thoughts on things that I think could have been better, or maybe just better. I think the pacing at the start of the film, it's a bit slow. And I've kind of seen that as like a critique online too, that the pacing isn't like, because it's really kind of slow for those first 30 minutes or first act, and then it gets fast, or it speeds up, But I think at the same time, because I'm a little bit torn on it, because I like the slowness, because it gives you some time to really sink into this reality, into the scene, and like understand, okay, this is where he's coming from. These are the characters, and like this is the world that he's accustomed to, and it does just give us a lot of time, one-on-one time with Mahito. So I think it's kind of a plus and a negative there, being slow at the start, but I think the pacing could been a bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I do think too it's very important to sink into what the real regular world is. And we'll talk about that more why in themes, but it's like we do kind of go on this Alice in Wonderland adventure with him, and it's I think important to get a grasp of what the world he'll be returning to is like and why he needs to come back before we go on that dive down the rabbit hole, which we get. But I do see it is a little slow, but I didn't mind it myself. I thought it was just setting the scene, and I liked all the interactions with the old grannies and the one old guy that he gives cigarettes to. So it's like,
yeah. Well, and I think one thing too that I appreciated was that they spent a little bit of focus on the war too. Not a ton of focus, but it was kind of like, oh, we got to stop and bow to the soldiers as they're passing by because we're showing our respect for them as they're going off to fight this battle for us. And I think that really kind of sinks into the reality of like, this is wartime Japan, World War II, kind of adds more to the scene. And just the reality of the world. One other thing too, I think that in the final act, it kind of felt a little bit like The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, where it's like, oh, Frodo reconnects with these people, and then Frodo reconnects with these people, and he reconnects with these people. It's like one ending after another, and I don't know. I just feel like this film kind of had like a few third act climaxes, but maybe I'm the only one there.
Okay, I didn't feel that, but I see like there are a lot of points that you could feel or like, oh, this is it, and then it keeps going. But I liked the flow of it.
But I love the ending, by the way. I think the ending's really, really effective, especially when they just kind of close that door at the end and he leaves the house. It's like, that's perfect. Like, yeah. So,
it's great.
Kind of backtracking a little bit on myself, but no big deal. There's small complaints because, again, I do think that the movie is really, really, honestly, kind of a masterpiece in a lot of ways. One thing that wasn't clear to me was the feathers with the heron. I don't understand why he needed the feathers back, and I don't understand why he had to obey Mahito. That was kind of weird to me. Maybe I missed something.
I don't know, because I don't really know either, and I guess it's just like the feathers, when torn, caused him a lot of pain, but remember they accidentally tear the one when he kicks him?
Yeah,
but
right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it was just like maybe a conceit to have them team up. Who knows?
Yeah. No, I'm fine with it. It was like a little odd. But I also really liked the feathers, like when he shot the arrow and then it just became a tracer arrow. I thought that was a really neat sequence. And then maybe I just kind of missed something earlier in the film, but the fact that his mother was actually the sister of Natsuko, his stepmother, it's a good reveal. And I like how they play with time and space, like his mother goes back to her time and they go back to their time. But this implies then that that his father just married the sister of his dead wife, which is kind of creepy to me.
I agree. It's weird. I was looking up right before this, like, was this common in this era in Japan? And for the most part, what I found was people were not sure and were looking up that question for the same reason I was.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, and it kind of makes sense if she looks really similar to his mom, but it's just kind of weird to just be like, well, 3 years have passed, I guess I'll go marry her sister and put a baby in her.
Yeah, I thought that was a little strange as well, and I think maybe part of it was that it ties really nicely in when he meets Hime in the fantasy world, and that way there's this emotional connection between all of them because they're sisters and they're both his moms in different times. So maybe it was more for that. But I agree, it was kind of weird. It's like, wait, that's okay. All right, whatever.
Yeah, just don't think about it. Just don't think. Just don't think about it. But yeah, those were the only kind of gripes that I had with the film. Otherwise, I really did enjoy it, and yeah, just fantastic. Do you want to move on?
Yeah, let's talk about the fantasy and the themes of everything, and just like I don't know, one more note on the world building, just because it's so cool and fun, and I love the oh god, I love that the sailors, the dead sailors can't kill anything, so it falls to Kiriko to like kill and prepare food so that everyone can eat. Just such a neat little touch that's not elaborated on at all. It's just like, this is how it is, and we're moving on. We're doing this because this is how this world works, and so it's our job.
Yeah. No, I loved those dead sailors. They were so interesting to look at on screen. And I was like,
Yeah.
Can I spend more time with them too, please? Whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting themes highlighted in The Boy and the Heron here. You know, it touches on things like grief, loss, growth, family, lots of different things. But I think one of the main ideas that's central to the narrative is this idea of kind of reality versus fantasy, and kind of to a lesser extent, maybe just like responsibility. You know, because Mahito, I think the biggest struggle for him in this film is just coming to terms with the reality, or the new reality of his life after the loss of his mother. You know, even after a few years have passed and they've moved outside of Tokyo, you know, you can really kind of see how he's struggling to cope and, you know, not happy with his life, not happy with the situation, not happy with the loss of his mom, and having to kind of accept this stepmother now as his new mom. It was just kind of like, I'm your new mom. Like, it's just like, oh God, there's a lot all at once. But you know, he kind of, you see this of his unhappiness and through his actions in the first 30 minutes of the film, the first act. You know, he goes out of his way to avoid school by intentionally harming himself. Like, he gets into a fight, but then later on he like hits himself in the head with a rock, so he can take some time off school and just kind of isolate himself. And
I thought that was more. I thought he was like trying to protect, like, or cover up, because he got beat up, and I thought he was like protecting his classmate who beat him up by faking a different injury, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. Do you see what I'm saying? Kind of. It's like,
because he was saying like, oh yeah, I just fell down. Yeah,
exactly.
That's all he's saying.
Yeah, so I thought he like inflicted a wound that would make it look like the rest of the injuries he had were as a result of some big fall. But I don't really know. I thought that was interesting as well. Maybe he was trying to isolate also, though, like you were saying.
Well, yeah, and I mean, once he gets to like the world of life and death, and he's talking to like Kiriko, you know, I think that he does mention like, yeah, I don't really like it up there. Like, I'm not really happy. She's kind of like asking him questions, and that's kind of like what he just says. And it's like, I think he's having these recurring nightmares too. Anytime he goes to sleep, and it's not him falling into this lucid dream-like state. It's like he's dreaming about, you know, the fire that killed his mom and his like him trying to save her. And you know, he wasn't trying to run away from his issues and his past when he entered the Tower Master's realm. He was just kind of sucked in to the reality when he was trying to rescue his new stepmother. But it was also because he was being led in there by the lie too, of like, your mother's in there, she's still alive, you should go talk to her. And the Heron was also kind of telling the truth. You know,
in a way, yeah,
because she's alive in there, just a different age. And
also you have the element that by the end of the movie he's referring to Natsuko as his mother, and he's accepting her as his new mom. So maybe there's a element of that too, where it's like your real mom is in there, and you can see her, but also the woman who will become your mother for the rest of your life is in there and needs her help as well.
Yeah, lots of different ways to interpret it, and you know, once he gets into that realm and he's learning about it, and we learn of his heritage and that the Tower Master wants him to inherit his abilities. Excuse me. He has, in theory, you know, or he would, in theory, have this ability to transform that world into a paradise, to solve all the problems, to get rid of those invasive species or control them better, you know, do these things to correct the world and kind of rebalance it. He knew that it wasn't where he needed to be. It wasn't his reality. He needed to get back to where he was, which is a surface world, and embrace these kind of bigger life changes that he was experiencing. And, I think it's a reflection of, we all can get engrossed in narratives and in these fantastical ideas in our head. Sometimes we play pretend and we're like, oh my God, wouldn't it be great if life was this way? And it's great to enjoy those moments and those ideas, but we can't let it just encapsulate us and keep us from experiencing reality in our lives.
Yeah.
And then, just for me too, I think kind of going back to that too, back to reality with his father. His father really wasn't a huge presence in this movie, but I think he's a very important character because to me he kind of represents this nonstop march of modernity or life or industrialization or the world in general. He's just kind of always action oriented, revving to go, saying like, this is. Even like when Mahito's like in bed with the head injury, he's like, who did this? Like, I'm going to get revenge for you. Like, I'm going to figure out who this is. It's like, he's never kind of pausing to think about like the emotional state of his son or like, how he feels right now. So like, he's kind of like juxtaposed against Mahito in a way. So I think they're kind of good dynamic there.
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe there's an element too whereas Mahito is sort of stuck, reliving the death of his mother. His father is more, like you said, about progress and moving forward, not just in terms of industrialization, but in life more generally. Like, he gets remarried to his wife's sister, which again is odd, but like he is building a new life where Mahito is stuck. And I think thematically, going back to what you were talking about with the real world and this fantasy, I think the Tower Master and Mahito's decision to return to the real world are really, really important in that theme of, like, you can't get stuck in the fantasy, right? Like, the Tower Master, it's talked about how, like, he just kept reading books and books and books and books and escaping from his real world and eventually just disappears entirely, right? And he's confused why Mahito would want to return to the world that's full of pain and chaos and death when there's this world that he can make perfect and fantastical. And I think through Mahito's decision, we are shown that, like, despite its flaws, the real world is the only one that we have, and we have to do what we can to make it as good as it can be. Like, retreating to a fantasy world is not a long-term solution or a real option, because and we see reasons why throughout the film. Like, for one, the master, the Tower Master, brought these creatures into his world, the pelicans and the parakeets. And in both cases, like, they are forced to change their nature and adapt to survive and do things that aren't great. Like, the pelicans are eating the waru waru, even though they don't really want to. They just, like, need... They've done everything they can to survive and take care of their young, and, like, it's just not working. And then the parakeets become these, like, weird, violent, food obsessed creatures in this world because they're not meant to be there, right? And then also you have the element that this world is unstable and it's doomed to collapse in on itself eventually. And, like, you can escape into a story or another world in your head as often as you want to, but you can't stay there because eventually you'll have to come back to reality. And I think it's trying to push us to fight for the betterment of our world and to leave it in a healthier place than when we got here, while also kind of embracing the reality of it and that it's a mess and learning to live with what we are given. Like with Mahito accepting Natsuko as his new mother, like, that's not perfect. He lost his mom. His life is forever changed, but he can accept this new reality and move forward and help build a new life. And, like, we all recognize how broken our world is, I think, but we can only afford to escape to fantasy for a little while. And then it's time to get back to work because we have to make this place good. And I think
Yes.
that's a big part of it. And I think there is an element, we talked about Miyazaki as the Tower Master earlier, but I think maybe there is some element of Miyazaki recognizing he is old now. He has left the majority of the legacy he will be able to leave on this world, and now it is time for other people to do that and to do more than he could, maybe. You know?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so true. And I mean, I think it is about translating the images inside your head, the vision, into reality, and contributing to this overall progress. I think you did really kind of nail it there. And one other thing too, the original film title, translated from Japanese for this, was going to be "How Do You Live?"
Yeah. And it is the title in Japan.
Oh, it is.
Still.
Oh, okay. I
Yes.
didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Over here, Boy and the Heron, but over there, How Do You Live? And I think that title, it's pretty telling of what the meaning of the film is. It's, posing this question, especially to our protagonists, like, how do you live? How are you going to get by now that your mom's gone? That this life is continuing. How do you live? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to just bottle up your emotions and forget about the past? Or are you going to try?
What type of person are you?
Yeah, what kind of person are you? Are you going to come to terms with the past in your own way and forge ahead, or are you just going to forget it and you don't learn anything from it?
Yeah. And it's also the name of the book that he finds that his mom left for him that says, like, for older Mahito.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't, when I first saw it, I did not know the film's Japanese title was How Do You Live, so I didn't make that connection. But I was like, oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's important too, and it's a very thematically appropriate title. It's like, what impact are you going to leave on the people around you? How are you living? Live well so that you impact the people around you in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic film. I could probably watch it a million times and still find something new, something enjoyable to pull out of it. Because even as we were having these conversations here, I was just starting to put two and two together in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, the because he made that comment to when he was. What was her name? Mimi?
Himi.
Himi, yeah, the fire
His mom.
girl. His mom, basically, she's cutting the bread and he's eating it, and he's like makes a comment to like, oh, I haven't had bread this good since my mom made it.
Yep.
And then it's like, why? God damn, that's brilliant. Because she
Well,
is his
and-
mom.
Well, and also you have the thing that, like, the way she saves the Waru and her, like, impact on this world is she uses fire and fireworks. And she dies in a fire at the beginning of the movie, so there's that connection as well. And
my God,
it's like there's and she travels around through fire, right? She like kind of uses it to teleport, I guess, which is pretty neat.
I love it.
It's great. It's such a good movie. But
Yes.
yeah, I think any final thoughts on it?
No, I don't think so. I think we said it all. But yeah, definitely positive, and recommend The Boy and the Heron.
Yeah. All right, so let's transition into other stuff for a little bit. Just talk about what else we've been watching, reading, playing, etc., etc. Niles, what have you been up to recently?
So between the travel recently, I haven't had much time to explore new things. Just kind of continuing on with some other shows that I've already talked about, like RuPaul's Drag Race, season 16. Loving it, enjoying it. Just a fun old gay time. Who would have thought it would be fun to watch drag queens do these kinds of things? And we finished Fargo season 5 as well.
Very nice.
I'm in love with it. I'm kind of obsessed with it in a way, low key obsessed. It's just such an excellent season. Really toys with the idea of debt, and lots of other themes too, like domestic violence and abuse. But there's just so much stuff in there. It's just such a fun season and great performances across the board too. And I just started this book called American Rust.
Okay.
I just want to get it for the screen here. American Rust here. It's just a fun novel by Philip Meyer, and it's actually really fascinating. It's like set in rural Pennsylvania, if I remember right, and basically these two characters. One of them is trying to leave town.
Mm-hmm.
They're friends from high school, and the other's like, "Hey, I'll walk with you to the rail yard. Like it's a rundown town. Like there used to be like a steel industry. It's collapsed there."
Okay.
But he's trying to get out of town. They meet, and then they share this very very violent act
Oh.
together. It kind of bonds them in a way, and it's just kind of them reeling from the chaos that they caused.
Oh my.
Yeah, really loving it so far. It's just a nice fun novel to read. But that's about it for me. What about you, Dylan? What are you up to lately?
I forgot to mention it last episode, but I've been watching the Percy Jackson show on Disney Plus. I read all those books as a kid, loved them back then. The show it's okay. It's like it's a pretty faithful adaptation, but it just feels kind of flat in a lot of ways. I can't point to like one thing, but it's just kind of like I'll watch an episode and be like, yeah, that was all right. It's solid.
Right.
And then I kind of just move on. So, I'm going to keep watching it. I have a lot of affection for that series and nostalgia for it.
Sure.
I also completed a rewatch of The Boys, in part because I wanted to refresh my memory for the video I was working on, but also it's just a good show, and I hadn't remembered a lot of the like finer details. So it was nice to rewatch, and now I think I'm all prepped for season 4, which is great.
Excellent.
Yeah, and continuing to read the Cryptonomicon. I'm about 200 pages into that now, I would say, and continues to be very interesting. I'm still not entirely sure what it's building to or what it's going for, but it's enjoyable to read and has interesting characters. So whatever.
That's the anthology series, right?
No, it's well, it's not an anthology, but it does take place in 2 separate time periods throughout the book. So there's like World War II era, and then characters are in the 90s, and it goes back and forth between them.
Gotcha. I was confusing that.
Yeah, and then I played some Anno 1800 over the weekend. I've done a couple of attempts of it before and fucked it up every time, but it's just a city builder supply chain management game, and this one is obviously set in 1800, and you just, you start building up your little city, and you start with farmers, and then farmers have certain goods and stuff they need, so you build the supply chains that make those goods, and you have to have the farmers to work in them, and you have to balance your budget, and then you get workers, and workers need different goods, so you have to build the supply chain to make them happy, but you can't turn everyone into a worker because then there's no one to work in the supply chain that the farmers need. So you have to balance all of that too, and it's very satisfying to play once it clicks, and it's like, but you have to be patient. If you go too fast and you don't have like enough firehouses or something, well, one of your crucial supply chain buildings might burn down, and then you went too fast, you spent all your money, so you don't have the money to build it anymore, and then the people are getting mad because they don't have their good, and they start rioting because they're upset, and then everything falls apart.
I love it. I want to play that.
It's cool. And I've also been watching. This week I started Lessons in Chemistry on Apple, starring Brie Larson, and it's this. She plays a chemist lab tech in the 1950s, and it's really good. I don't want to say more about the plot or anything, but I've watched the first 3 episodes. I like it a lot, and I think it's just a mini series, so just 8 episodes and done. Cool. Also, went to see Godzilla -1, which fucking ruled. It's so cool.
Excellent.
I would recommend it to basically anyone. Like, it's a great Godzilla movie. And then I saw The Iron Claw, the wrestling movie about the Von Erich family, starring Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White. Fantastic film. Absolutely soul-crushing. It's so upsetting.
But it's that kind of movie.
It's really good. I'm shocked that it got no Oscar nominations at all. Like crazy. But yeah, and then the last thing, I've been watching True Detective Night Country, which I'm really enjoying. I think it's really good. One scene had some some AI generated posters in the background of the set, which I hate. But other than that, the show is great. It's there are a couple like fringe details of it that may have me a little concerned. I'm like, I don't like that they're doing some connections to season 1. Very tangential at this point, but I don't love that. There might be actual supernatural stuff this season, which I'm not sure how I'd feel about.
Okay, yeah.
But it could just be like a misdirect, and it's just the people's beliefs in the area or something like that. But it's very interesting because it's in Alaska during the winter,
right.
And it's called Night Country because it's set during the time of year where like the sun sets for like 3 weeks or something, and it's just dark all the time. So it gives this really cool disorienting sense because it looks like nighttime, but it's for them, it's like they're pouring their cups of coffee and walking into work, and it just makes it feel very eerie. So I'm liking it a lot. I think we'll probably do an episode on it when the season's done because it's really cool.
I'm down.
Yeah, I think that's all that I've been looking at. So yeah, that's gonna do it for us this week, I think. Not sure what we're talking about next, but we'll figure it out in the next 2 weeks.
Find something.
Yeah. But thank you all so much for watching and or listening. If you liked it, subscribe on YouTube. Give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice and share with your friends and family. That's how we grow, and we would like to grow. It's always fun. But yeah, thank you all so much. Niles, where can people find you online in between now and next episode?
On Instagram at NilesGotNoStyles. Dylan, what about you? Where can people follow you online?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at DDayMovies, on YouTube with a new video, also at DDayMovies. That'll be linked in the description. And on Twitch at DDay_movies. And I think that is all of the places. But you can find us both here at Play Pause Rewind, also on our second YouTube channel, Play Pause Rewind Videos. And we have a TikTok, Play Pause Rewind _podcast, I think. We're all over those places. I'm working on posting TikToks and YouTube shorts and stuff more regularly, trying to get back into the production swing of all that. But yeah, thank you all so much for supporting the show and watching our stuff. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Bye.